We have some big news on the fight against the coronavirus. Last hour, Johnson & Johnson announcing it's now selected a lead vaccine candidate and says it expects to begin phase 1 human clinical trials by September at the latest. Joining us right now is Johnson & Johnson CEO Alex Gorsky, and we're thrilled to have him on the program. Alex, thank you for joining us. This is very good news. Tell us about what's gone into this and why you are so optimistic about it.
Well, Andrew and Joe and Becky, thank you so much for having me on this morning. Although, it's always tough to follow Senator Cruz. But, we're very excited about the announcement that we're making this morning about the partnership that we're doing with BARDA, which is the government agency responsible for pandemics and vaccines, and what we're going to be doing to accelerate our development, but also our production for something against COVID-19. And really this started decades ago. We've been working in the immunology field for some time. We've been working in areas, for example, like SARS, Ebola, HIV. And I think what gives us a lot of confidence is based upon the work that we've done with this vaccine platform, we have very good early indicators that not only can we depend on this to be a safe vaccine base, but also one that will ultimately be effective based on all the early testing and modeling that we've been doing. As you mentioned earlier, we expect to begin first in human testing in September. But in parallel, as you know, not only do you need a safe and effective vaccine, but you also need to have one that can be produced in very large volumes. We're going to be doing that at risk simultaneously right here in the United States. And we expect to have results, interim results at least, from our trials, likely in December, at the latest early January, that should put us in a position early in 2021 to literally have hundreds of millions of doses available, and then by the end of the year, up to 1 billion. So that's our plan. That's the reason why we're confident. We understand we've got more testing. We still have a lot more work to do. But this is a bit of a moonshot for J&J going forward, but it's one that we feel is very important for us to be doing at this period in time.
So, Alex, in terms, though, of the timeline, the ability to get this into the marketplace, if you will, you're talking about early 2021 for lots of people to get this? Is that going to be just for special access, or are you talking really about next summer? What's that timeline look like in your mind?
Sure, Andrew. Well, look, I don't mean to sound like an economist, but it is going to depend on a few factors. But let me tell you why we're optimistic. If we have the interim results from our clinical trials late this year, and let's just project forward a time where, frankly, there still is, significant concern about the pandemic as we head into 2021, we will have the ability to work with regulators to determine, first of all, that we have a safe and effective vaccine based upon our trial results within the first quarter of next year. And because we will have made the efforts to open up a production facility here in the U.S., to do all the technology transfer that's required, we should also be in a position to have a very significant number of dosages available in that Q1, Q2 period. Now, look, we're going to have to learn more. We're going to have to see exactly what our yield is, but we're very confident in the underlying technology that we have, that we can have that level of dosages available and then ultimately make the right decision, again, early in 2021 about, what's in the best public health interest and how we proceed.
Alex, what is this vaccine going to cost the consumer, do you imagine? And your stock has moved on this number. Is this going to be profitable for you?
Well, look, this is about doing right but for global public health. And as we said in our statement, our number one concern after bringing it out and demonstrating that it's safe and effective is to make sure that it's accessible and affordable on a global level. And in fact, we're taking it a step further, and we're going to say we're going to do this on a not-for-profit basis. We're working jointly with the government on this, where we'll be putting more than $1 billion worth of investment, both in terms of the research and development, but also scaling up the production capacity on this, in the very near term. And so that's our expectation. It's difficult for me to say an exact price because we still have to determine some of these other factors. But look, we want to make sure, again, that everyone can get access and that we can do so basically consistent with what you see other commonly used vaccines for, here in our country and around the world.
Hey, Alex, you had your economist hat on for a second. Put on your scientist hat for me. Tell me what you're keying on in terms of basing the vaccine on. Is it something on the surface of the virus? Is it something that is in the nucleic acids, the mRNA itself? And why are you confident that this is conserved? In other words, if there's mutations, this will be essential to the way the virus works, so it'll continue to work even if there is a mutation.
Look, Joe, I appreciate the question, and let me respond this way. I think, first of all, we've got a lot of confidence because, as you know, when you're building a vaccine, you almost have got to think about, one way to think about it is like a car. And the body of the car, the platform that we're using, is one that we have already demonstrated safety and efficacy in things like SARS, which, as you know, as a biologist, is a similar condition in what or similar science to what we're seeing with COVID-19. We've also used it in older patients for Ebola, for example, in younger patients, and we've seen the safety to be, very consistent. This next step, of course, was, okay, now what kind of a motor, what kind of software can we insert into that car that's actually going to be effective against COVID-19? And what we know about all of the work that we've done in vaccines is the early testing that we're doing, both in vivo as well as in some animal models, tends to be very predictive of ultimately what you're going to see in the human trials itself. As you know, the coronavirus, it's a tough virus. It's an RNA virus, and so we're based upon what we've seen so far, we think that we've got the right approach. Obviously, we wouldn't be taking these other steps if we didn't feel that way. But we do have to conduct the human trials, and we'll learn a lot more through that process as we go through the fourth quarter of this year.
And you could scale up manufacturing quickly and get a lot of it. It's not like some of the vaccines that are very difficult to make.
Joe, that's a great point. And as I'm sure you're aware, with traditional vaccines, frequently you're actually working with an egg, like a chicken egg, where you may be able to yield a couple of doses per egg. It has to be done on the surface of a very large vat. And that, of course, takes time and can result in years of development. What's unique about our approach, and it's interesting because it's actually from a technology, another vaccine platform that we were going after, that initially we didn't achieve some of our objectives, and that frequently happens in investment in research and development. But the production capability is called Per-C6. So basically what that does, and instead of having to use an egg or instead of having to have it on the surface, this can be done where it's very in an intense environment. So think of a 1,000-liter beaker where these proteins can be harvested. They don't need to be on the surface, and so we can get very high yield. So, for example, in a 1,000-liter beaker, we're getting yields of literally hundreds of millions of vaccines. And that, of course, is what gives us the confidence that not only will we have a vaccine that works, but we can produce it in the kind of volumes that are really going to make the difference and frankly, tamp down the curve and, eventually prevent this virus from happening in the first place.
Alex, that's kind of related to my question. I know that you guys are taking what would normally take 5 to 6 years and compressing it into 5 to 6 months. And I just wonder, is that because technology is advancing so quickly? Is that because you're pouring $1 billion worth of resources into it? Is that because the FDA is relaxing some of its guidelines? What gets you to that point?
Becky, it's really all the above. And it starts with, and let me just say a huge thank you to Dr. Paul Stoffels, Dr. Johan van Hoof. I mean, people who have poured a good chunk of their careers into understanding infectious disease and conditions like this. And they have literally been working 24/7 to identify, how do we, first of all, put this through the most rigorous tests that are going to give us the signal that indicates it. And we quickly went through our library, and that's where now we have focused on this one particular vector that we're highly confident in. Simultaneously, we've been working on all the technology transfer, the production ramp up. So another shout out to our global supply chain colleagues who have been working around the clock to say, how can we do this? And by the way, how can we do this in the United States, even though that's not where some of the original technology was developed? How can we bring it here at a level that we can scale up, not compromise at all in regarding safety or quality? but do it in the right way. And so all those factors, and then, of course, the partnership with the United States. And I want to thank the government, BARDA, the work that they've been doing, HHS, also the FDA. They've worked closely with us. As you know, if you do an interim analysis statistically, how can we accelerate that? Again, making sure that we're getting all the information that we need, but also recognize, frankly, the situation that we're in around the world.
Alex, we want to thank you for joining us this morning. We also want to wish you well. Your success will be the world's success, and we appreciate you joining us this morning.
Well,
so
Andrew Joan Begno, just thank you. And look, biology started this, and biology and pharmacology is going to be a big part of winning this in the end, and we are absolutely committed to making that happen. Thank you, guys.